Have you ever, started something big,
Hmm.
like a new job or maybe a spiritual journey? You think you know where you're headed, but then bam, an immediate challenge just pops up and throws everything off track. It's that feeling, right? When a really clear promise suddenly meets, well, a very messy reality. Well, today we're doing a deep dive into exactly that kind of moment from ancient history. It's Abram's journey in Genesis chapter 12, verses 5 through 10. It's actually a pretty short passage, easy to just skim past. But it's absolutely packed with meaning, reveals some profound stuff about faith, obedience, and, yeah, those curveballs life throws just when you've taken a big step.
That's exactly right. And our mission today really is to unpack this story for you. We'll follow Abram's first steps, look at the incredible promises God gives him, and also his very human reactions. And importantly, we want to peel back the layers of the original Hebrew. There are nuances there that just bring it alive, help us understand how God's promises can face tests, like right away, and what that might mean for our own lives, our own journeys.
Yeah, and I think by the end of this, you'll have a much richer feel for this story, maybe even a new way to look at your own moments of promise and, well, unexpected challenges. We're going to discover that sometimes the real story isn't just the destination, but how we handle those detours,
Yeah.
especially the ones that show up right after that big invitation. So, yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so the story kicks off. Abram, his whole household, they're embarking on this huge journey God commanded. Verse 5 says, they set out for the land of Canaan, and into the land of Canaan they came. What strikes me first, even before we get technical, is just how direct that is. He was told, go, and he went. Like, no messing around.
And that directness. It's actually mirrored beautifully in the Hebrew. The text uses this neat parallel structure, weyoru, weyobu. It almost rhymes. They went out, they entered. It's a very concise way to show that what God asked, Abram did. Fully, unlike his father, Terah, remember, he started but kind of stalled out. Abram finishes this first crucial step. It's pure obedience.
That is powerful, simple but strong. And it wasn't just Abram and Sarai, right? The text makes a point of saying he took all the souls they had acquired in Haran.
Hmm.
Now, souls, that word makes me pause. It feels heavier than just like servants or staff. What's going on there?
You're onto something really key there. Yes, the Hebrew word is hanafesh, the soul. And here it likely implies way more than just counting bodies or employees. It suggests a deeper connection. You might even say a spiritual gathering. Many scholars think this could mean people drawn to Abram's faith, maybe even early converts choosing to follow him, follow his God on this uncertain path. So it paints Abram not just as a patriarch, but maybe as a spiritual leader right from the start.
Wow, okay, so he's leading not just a family, but potentially a whole community of faith into this new land. That's a big deal. All right, so Abram keeps moving. He passes through the land, gets to a place called Shechem. Specifically, it says the Oak of Moreh. What's significant about that spot?
Ugh. The Oak of Moreh, that's fascinating. Elon Moreh in Hebrew. Elon can mean oak or terebinth, often just a significant, probably sacred tree. And Moreh means teacher or maybe even oracle. What's really interesting is this seems to be a pre-existing Canaanite holy site, a place already known for spiritual significance, maybe divination, by the locals. So Abram isn't setting up shop in a vacuum. He's stepping on the ground that already has a spiritual identity, just not one focused on YHWH.
Yeah, right. So he arrives in this existing Canaanite sacred spot, which makes what happens next even more striking, because right there, God appears to him. But then the text drops in this little detail, almost like a side note, but it feels huge. And the Canaanite was then in the land. In a whom? Why mention that right then? It feels, I don't know, ominous.
Ominous is a good word. It's brilliant narrative tension. That word Canaanite, stuck right there. It's a signal flare for the reader. It screams, this land, God's promising, it's not empty, it's occupied. God's promise isn't happening in some pristine empty space. It's a declaration made right in the face of the current inhabitants. Potential conflict is baked in from the start. God is essentially staking his claim on, well, you could say occupied territory.
Occupied territory. That definitely raises the stakes. Would Abram have seen it quite that starkly right away?
Yeah.
Or just, a place with people? Because right after that detail, God's declaration in verse 7 is just immense. YHWH appeared to Abram and said, to your seed I will give this land. That phrase, your seed, Sarka, that's got to be central.
Absolutely central. And your question about Abram's perception is good. Maybe it evolves, he arrives, sees people, but then God speaks this promise in this context. It must have sharpened his awareness of the challenge. And yes, Zarka, your offspring, your descendants, it's monumental, especially when you remember the bigger story. Sarai, his wife, is barren, can't have children, yet God declares right here, two seemingly impossible things, seed and land. And he says it at a Canaanite shrine. It underlines God's authority, his power over existing realities, over biology, over everything. It's audacious.
Completely audacious. Okay, so Abram gets this, frankly, unbelievable promise in an occupied land with a barren wife. His response, he builds an altar. Right then and there, it feels like he's, I don't know, planting a flag for YHWH, just saying, this spot belongs to him now.
That's a perfect way to put planting a flag. The Hebrew word is mizbeh. It literally means place of sacrifice. It's a humble act, right? Just piling stones, especially compared to, say, big human projects like the Tower of Babel we read about earlier. This isn't about human ego. It's pure spiritual significance. Dedication, acknowledging the promise, claiming God's presence.
And he doesn't stay put. He keeps moving. Verse 8 says he travels on and pitches his tent. And get this location between Bethel and A. Bethel means house of God. A means heap of ruins.
Okay.
I mean, the symbolism there, living between God's house and a pile of rubble. Right.
Yeah, isn't that incredible?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
human. It's like that's where we live so often, isn't it? Pitching our lives somewhere between those moments of divine connection, the Bethel moments, and the messy, broken stuff, the A moments, the ruins. Abram is literally living that tension from day one.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful metaphor for navigating life, where the sacred and the broken are just side by side.
Yeah, it really resonates. And what does he do there? In that space between hope and ruin, he builds another altar. And it says he calls on the name of YHWH. What does that mean, calls on the name?
Good question. That phrase, Wakra Bashim YHWH, and he called on the name of YHWH, it's more than just like private prayer. In this context, it's seen as covenant language. It implies a public declaration. He's proclaiming God's name, making his allegiance known, openly worshiping in a land where that name isn't known or revered. He's not just thinking about God, he's announcing him,
Right.
establishing that relationship publicly.
Okay, so things seem to be building. Obedience, arrival, promises, altars, public declaration. You'd expect maybe smooth sailing now. But then, verse 10 hits like a ton of bricks. Just suddenly, now there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt. Oof. Right after all that, the promised land itself seems to fail him.
Yeah, it's a sharp turn, isn't it? The Hebrew word for famine, race, it carries real weight. This isn't just, oh, groceries are a bit scarce. It's a crisis, an existential threat. The very land God just promised, the place of divine encounter, suddenly feels empty, hostile, unable to sustain life. Talk about an immediate test. How do you trust the promise when the land itself is pushing you out?
Exactly. And the text says he went down, wadered. He descends to Egypt. It's a literal geographical descent, but you feel the symbolic weight too, right? A
Yeah.
step away from the promise.
Absolutely. And that verb, wayered, to go down, it's incredibly significant biblically. It echoes later. Jacob and his sons will also go down to Egypt during a famine. That descent marks a huge, difficult chapter in Israel's history. So Abram's personal detour here, his immediate crisis response, it becomes this kind of prophetic shadow, foreshadowing the nation's future. Even personal struggles can echo larger divine narratives.
Okay, let's just recap this roller coaster for a second. Abram obeys the call, arrives, worships at specific sites, receives these huge promises, seed, land, builds altars, declares God's name, and then boom, famine hits. And he has to descend, leave the promised land for survival. It really messes with our expectations, doesn't it? Like, obedience should equal instant blessing, not instant crisis.
It totally challenges that simple equation. What this immediate test shows us is that Abram's journey isn't just, up and to the right. The genius of this story is how it immediately flips that expectation. God's promises aren't invalidated by the test. Maybe they're even deepened by it. Faith gets forged in these moments. Abram learns right away. Life with God isn't only mountaintops and altars. Sometimes it's famines, sometimes it's descents. It's that immediate testing after the promise that makes it so real.
Wow. So reflecting on these first steps, it's powerful how those Hebrew words trace the whole arc. You've got Hanafesh, the souls he brings, maybe a whole community. Elon More, the oak of the teacher, that existing sacred site where God meets him. Zarka, the impossible promise of seed. Mizbeh, the altars, his flags of faith. Wayikra, his public calling on God's name.
And then the sharp turn, Rafat, the famine, the crisis. And Wayard, his descent into Egypt. It maps both that upward trajectory of promise and worship and the immediate downward turn into testing and detour.
Yeah. So this deep dive into just these few verses, Genesis 12.510, It really shows that this life of faith is, well, dynamic. It's this constant interplay, isn't it? Promises sealed with altars, yes, but also these challenging famines that push us in unexpected directions.
Exactly. It's a journey where the divine plan keeps unfolding. Maybe not always in comfort, but often right through the trials. The trials don't derail the plan, and in a way, they become part of how faith is built, how purpose is found, even in the detour.
So, maybe something for all of us to think about this week. Considering Abram's immediate test, how do you navigate those times when a great promise in your own life seems immediately followed by a big challenge or an unexpected detour? How do our own altars, our markers of belief, stand up when we hit those famines? Definitely something to mull over.